If you are like me and you tend to allocate a lot of salary towards pitchers in MLB DFS, it can be kind of frustrating because it means we don't get to use these really good hitters with the high salaries all that often. That means today is going to be a little bit like a recess, a vacation for you because A, there aren't a lot of high salary pitchers to use, but also the guy with the largest salary is not someone I necessarily want to target for MLB DFS. So we get a little bit extra salary to play with at hitter. That's going to be a lot of fun, and I think that there are some good ways to use it. So let's dive on in and get you set for what should be a fun slate. Welcome on into the Solo Shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to preview Monday's six-game main slate with lock set for 6:35 for this evening. Again, 6:35 is lock. If you are like me and tend to procrastinate, make sure you keep that in mind because lock is a half hour earlier for tonight than usual to get in the Reds versus Pirates game, which does start at 6:35. There is one weather note for today, and it's kind of a sad one given that we do have the extra salary to play with for today, but it's super gross weather at Coors Field for the Rockies and the Padres. It is just 41 degrees with steady rain in the forecast. They have had similar games to this year that they have postponed. So don't be surprised if this one gets knocked out. I am saying that. I will talk about this game later on during the stacking section, but just know before we get there that game looks a little bit risky for today. So make sure you're keeping an eye on the weather if you want to stack Coors, which I would like to do, but we'll talk about that later on. Given the weather, given the early lock time, plenty could change later on today, so make sure you swing back by 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages for our daily Q&A. We can take questions about pitchers, stacks, one-offs, MLB DFS process, whatever is on your mind. Swing by today, 4 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll take questions from wherever you are watching there and get you set for tonight's slate. Hey, soccer fans, this season, FanDuel and Captain Morgan are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest. Introducing Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that's entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you have to do is make quick predictions for Saturday games this soccer season. You will earn points for each correct pick and compete for a chance to win up to $3,000 in prizes every single week. Head over to FanDuel and enter the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em today. Must be 21 plus to participate. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply, and don't forget to make your game day more delicious and sub in the captain. Pitching preview for this Monday main slate. Kyle Gibson is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel at $9,500, followed by Alex Wood at $8,900. Tyler Mahle is not technically listed as the probable pitcher for the Reds right now, but I'm pretty sure he's the probable pitcher. Again, they got postponed yesterday. Like their website listed as being Jeff Hoffman. I'm pretty sure it's Mahle, though. We're going to proceed as if it's Mahle. Just keep in mind that could change because they're being kind of weird. Everything I've seen says Mahle. Their website says Hoffman. I don't think that's accurate. So we're going to proceed as if it is Mahle. He is also $8,900. Martin Perez is $8,400. And Luis Garcia is $8,000, rounding at the top group. And with Mahle, I am a little bit worried beyond the fact that they have not officially said he's a starter for today, but he started the year with really good velocity. It was actually up from where it was last year, and it went down in his most recent start. And he led up 3 home runs across 5 innings. That is a concern. A dip in velocity paired with a dip in results, that stands out. I think the matchup he's got here is enough to keep me on board for now, though. He's facing the Pirates, and they are living up to their low expectations this year. They have an 88 WRC plus against righties. Starting today, whenever I reference opposing numbers, they will be from just this year. I have been doing 2020 to 2021. This will be just the current active roster, what they've done this year for both lefties and righties, just as a content note there. 88 WRC plus for the Pirates against righties, 28% hard hit rate, super low. So even though they don't strike out a bunch, they are still a plus matchup for righties. And the low hard hit rate specifically is reassuring for Mahle, because if you were to list out one weakness for Mahle this year, it has been walks and hard contact. The Pirates don't do a ton of either. That allows us to focus more on the upside here and what Mahle has, and he brings that for sure. Overall this year, Mahle has a 32% strikeout rate. He has 9 strikeouts twice. That's despite some tough-ish matchups against some low strikeout teams. He's had still good results despite a kind of a difficult road there. The Pirates are the latter, where they are a low strikeout team, but very much not the former with a tough matchup. I think Mahle should have a high floor here due to the matchup, and he has a path to a good ceiling via the strikeouts. That's not bad for this slate. So I'm willing to put Mahle at the top of my list. For $8,900, again, make sure you swing back and check to make sure he's actually starting, because, again, the Reds website says it's Jeff Hoffman. I don't know. Usually they're right. I think they might be wrong for today. Given all the beat reporters yesterday were saying that Mahle would be pushed back to today, given the rain out. So I think it's Mahle. Not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it is. So check back on that later. But assuming it is Mahle, he is my number one pitcher for today. Second for me is the guy at the exact same salary as Mahle, and Alex Wood. And Wood is $8,900. So, I'm just kind of picking who I like more between the two. Mahle 1, Wood 2, but that's nothing against Wood. He's looked really good so far this year. He has made 4 starts. The velocity for Wood has been tremendous. His sinker velocity is the highest it has been since 2017. His slider velocity is the highest it has ever been. He's also throwing more sliders this year than in years past, though he did lower the usage on that slider in his most recent start. I'm not going to read too much into that personally, because he was facing the Rockies for a second consecutive start, and it makes sense. They just saw what you're doing. Maybe you want to change things up, change your approach a bit to keep them on their toes, but now he gets a fresh matchup here. Wood is facing the Rangers in San Francisco. They have not struck out as much this year against lefties as they did last year, but 24% strikeout rate, that's still decently high, and I would assume that goes up as the year goes along. Everything else for Wood is really encouraging. He has for the Rangers have a 27% fly ball rate this year. That's crazy low. A 6% walk rate. So it's kind of similar to the Pirates, where even if they're not striking out a ton, they're allowing pitchers to go deep into games, and that allows them to generate upside, even if the strikeout rate may not be super high. And Wood's been very good on top of everything this year. He has a 3.02 skill interactive ERA, 26% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate. And when you look at the velocity, I think we have reason to expect those good numbers for Wood to carry on as the sample expands. The Giants are a team that I trust from a pitching perspective. We've seen they've done with other guys in the past, and I think maybe we're seeing the same thing here with Wood, who's been good before, just hasn't been healthy. Seems pretty healthy right now, given the velocity, given the slider usage. I give the Giants the benefit of the doubt, and that is enough for me to put Wood a sturdy second behind Mahle. I feel very comfortable putting Mahle first, but I also feel very comfortable putting Wood second. I think they're definitively the top 2 guys here. With that said, I don't feel great about a third pitcher. It is kind of just Mahle and Wood who I feel good about. Kyle Gibson, he's fine, but we'd also be talking about the top 3 highest salary guys in the slate. That's not very fun, and I don't think he grades out as well as Mahle or Wood. So it's really easy for me to gloss over Gibson as my third pitcher. So instead, we have to take on some risk. There is no other safe option on this slate outside of maybe you put Mahle and Wood in that bucket. Nobody else, though, is safe. One guy who at least has a ceiling, he doesn't have the floor, he has a ceiling, is Luis Garcia. And I think he'll be third on my list, though in the interest of transparency, I might not use him for tonight just because I think it might be better to build around Mahle and Wood and, deviate with our stacks instead. Part of the reason for this is that Garcia's in a tough matchup. He's facing the Angels, who have been a tremendous offense this year. They have a 125 WRC plus versus righties, which is easily the highest mark on this slate. Garcia's seen them twice so far. He made his first start of the season against them. He had just 1 strikeout compared to 3 walks across 3 1/3 innings. That's not great. He also saw them in relief on April 25th. He had no strikeouts in, I think, an inning and 2/3 there. So pretty rough, but to Garcia's credit, and the reason why I think we can feel a bit more confident in him is that he's been tinkering, potentially finding some good stuff here recently. In his most recent start, he threw his cutter 27% of the time. That is the highest his usage has been all year. That is up from a full season mark of 19.8%. That's a positive because that cutter is a very good pitch. The xWOBA, according to Baseball Savant, against that pitch this year is 158. It was 195 last year for him, too. It was a small sample. He used it less than 10% of the time. Obviously, he wasn't up very long, but it was a good pitch for him in a small sample, looking good in a small sample this year as well. We want Garcia to use more of that pitch, and he is following through on that desire. worked out really well for him too. He didn't last super long against the Yankees, but he got whiffs, got people to chase pitches outside the zone, and long term, that should work out well. I am willing to take shots on Garcia here. I think he ranks third behind Mahle and Wood. And the reason I'm willing to put him there is because he could be a high strikeout guy if he keeps using that cutter the way that he has. I don't feel confident enough to rank him above the other guys. And again, I might not get here for tonight from an exposure perspective, but I do think that if I were ranking pitchers, Garcia would be number 3 for me. But Mahle definitely 1, Wood definitely number 2. So let's talk about stacks. And again, we have increased salary flexibility for tonight, given that Mahle and Wood are both $8,900. So we want to put that to good use. There are 2 really easy stacks for me to love for tonight. The first one is at Coors Field. If they let that game play, despite the low temperature, despite the fact the Padres have not been very good so far this year, I do still think that if that game plays, they would be the number 1 stack. So let's talk about it here just in case we get the all clear on the weather for that game later on. Antonio Senzatela is coming off the injury list, start this game for the Rockies. And, the Padres have not hit very well this year, but I think this could be a good spot to get the bats hot as we head into the middle part of May. Senzatela was pitching like his old self before the stint on the injured list. Didn't miss a lot of time, so I think we can kind of just go back to looking at what he did before that IL stint, and he's one of the guys we stack against despite having good batted ball data. He does get ground balls, he does limit hard contact, but he allows so many balls in play that it winds up kind of being a wash. He has a 13% strikeout rate this year with a 7% walk rate, and add that up, it means he allows a ball in play 80% of the time. That's a rough situation anywhere, but it's especially rough at Coors Field. So even though he has a low barrel rate against, he does let up some barrels. He has allowed 6 total barrels in his 6 starts this year. He's allowed 45 hard hit balls in 6 starts. That's an average of 7.5 per start. We can work with that. I think the Padres need to be near the top of our list as a result of this matchup and as a result of being at Coors Field. Again, check the weather later on to make sure they're good to go. Downgrade them a bit because the temperature is so low. But assuming this game does play, I will be very in on the Padres here. And the salaries are very reasonable for the Padres. Got Will Myers, Jake Cronenworth, Austin Nola, and Tommy Pham all at $3,200 and lower and likely to start this game. That means you should be able to pluck a couple of value guys and use our increased salary flexibility to get to Fernando Tatis Jr. I would be especially aggressive with Cronenworth here. He's been someone I've been talking about a lot this year. But he has everything you want for stacking. He has a low strikeout rate, a high hard hit rate, a high fly ball rate. He is $3,000 at Coors Field. I hope this game plays mainly so I can go all out on Cronenworth once again. But overall, I think that it's one we should be in on regardless if you like Cronenworth or not. As long as the weather does allow this game to play, that is a pretty open question, though. And especially tougher with the early lock. So we'll have to be a little bit on our toes from a predictiveness perspective for that one. For the second stack, I think that the other one is pretty obvious too. It's the Astros as the top non-core stack on the slate. Likely facing Jose Suarez. They have not officially announced this pitcher yet either. It sounds like he will be in the plans. I'm guessing the reason they have not announced a starter yet is because they're probably going to use an opener. So I bet it'll be an opener for the Angels here. Suarez coming in after that. And Suarez has seen some action in both 2019 and 2020. This will be his 2021 debut, and it's possibly he's made some changes since then, but those changes will be, they'll need to be substantial for us to not want to stack against him here. He has made 17 career starts in the major leagues. In those 17 starts, he has a 19% strikeout rate, a 9% walk rate, and a 36% ground ball rate, all those exactly where we want them from a stacking perspective. Suarez has gotten more whiffs, so it's possible that his strikeout rate does come up, and he also got a lot of strikeouts in AA back in 2018. We want to be fully clear here, but those strikeouts did not follow him to AAA. They didn't follow him to AAA in 2018 or 2019, and they didn't follow him to the majors. It's possible that could come this year because he is still very young, but I would need to see it before I believe it. Suarez projects as someone that we just want to stack against. That's especially true with this Astros lineup because they've got a lot of good righties in this lineup. We have the salary to get there. So I think they're a no-brainer here at the top of our list after the Padres at Coors Field. And if we lose the Padres, the Astros would be number 1. Now, the handedness of the Astros here is very interesting because they may get an opener who's a righty. That may open things up for the lefties. But I would say even if Suarez starts, we should be in on the lefties here because Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez both hit lefties really well. Tucker against lefties has a 44% hard hit rate and fly ball rate. He hasn't gotten big production from that yet, but it very well could come soon. Alvarez, he's hit for power, not striking out too much. So I would say kind of regardless of what the Angels do with regards to an opener, I would say we should be in on both the lefties and the righties here. So the righties benefit because Suarez is lefty, but I would say no matter what they decide to do with the opener, we should be in on the lefties here as well. Tucker and Alvarez specifically. Brantley is okay. Not the biggest power guy, not the biggest upside guy, but Tucker and Alvarez, both are really fun for me for tonight, regardless of how the Angels play things with a righty versus a lefty. Now, for our third stack here, and again, we're keeping things, potentially bumping them up, depending on the Padres versus Rockies game. Let's talk about the Reds. They're facing Mitch Keller, who made some big improvements last week. He threw 5 2/3 innings of shutout baseball. He allowed just 2 hits. That came against the Padres. So that was a really good outing for Mitch Keller. And it could scare us out of stacking the Reds here. I do still think that they're a good option, though. And I'm going to rank them third here behind the Padres and the Astros. And Keller was awesome in that one. 5 strikeouts and 2 walks. Give him tons of credit for that. But one key thing was still missing, in that he didn't get any whiffs. He had just a 2.4% swing and strike rate. Yes, 2.4%. That means that he feasted almost entirely on called strikes. And that could carry over. It very well could carry because called strikes can be predictive as well. Or it could have been a generous home plate umpire giving him some friendly zones there. He let up 8 balls with an exit velocity of 95 plus miles per hour. That was out of 14 total balls in play. So Keller didn't generate whiffs, and he still let up hard contact. I think that means we should continue to buy into his season-long numbers. It's a 5.10 skill interactive ERA, 6.29 ERA, 34% ground ball rate. As of right now, I am still good stacking against Keller until the sample of him excelling gets large enough to believe in. He is a guy who has had prospect type in the past. So we talked about this before with guys like Casey Mize. I think it applies to Keller too, where if you see signs of life, it is okay to jump off from a stacking perspective. I have not seen enough from Keller to jump off yet. So as of right now, I'm still in. If he's good again tonight, given the Reds are a pretty solid offense, then we might want to reevaluate. But for right now, I'm okay going to the Reds. And thankfully, again, the Reds benefit too with this being a low pitching salary slate because, we got to get to Nick Castellanos, got to get to Jesse Winker, and all those guys are very high salary. One guy who is not high salary, though, who I do want to buy low on right now is Eugenio Suarez. He has just a 58 WRC plus against righties, which is pretty rough, and that's largely because he is striking out a ton. And strikeouts stabilize quickly. That is a massive red flag for Suarez. The good thing, though, is he is still making a lot of hard contact. He has an 11.6% barrel rate this year. The strikeouts have been inching down a smidge recently. That may be me looking for reason to buy in, but they've been down a bit recently. So I think Suarez will hit soon, and I want to buy into him here at just $3,000. So we don't need to save salary as Suarez for tonight, but I do think that it is worthwhile at $3,000 to buy into him because he's a good hitter. Eventually, things will start to fall in for him. Let's finish up with things to watch, and I do want to go through some alternatives here in case that Coors Field game does not wind up playing. The first place I'd turn is the Red Sox and Jorge Lopez. Lopez can get some ground balls. His strikeouts are up this year, but they're up to just 22%. That's still pretty low. He is allowing a 9.1% barrel rate. That's above average. The Red Sox are at a 115 WRC plus against righties. I think they'll do well here. The Red Sox, I would have felt very okay putting them third for stacking if we had decided to lop off the Padres due to weather there. Red Sox do make a lot of sense. I'm also okay with the other side of that game with the Orioles. They're facing Martin Perez. He's done a really good job of limiting our contact this year, which is kind of the staple of Perez, but they do put the ball in the air against him. His strikeout rate isn't all that high. It's not an ideal formula for stacking, but it will work at times. So I would make sure, the Orioles should be on your radar, but I wouldn't go super hard at them. I would say they are a full tier behind our top three stacks, and I'd say they're a good chunk behind the Red Sox. Well, I think the Red Sox are closer to the top three tier than the Orioles are to the Red Sox. That's the way I do that for today. Finally, I'd like to get some exposure to the Marlins Diamondbacks game. It's a good hitting environment with high temperatures there. I'm not sure who the Marlins are starting yet. They have not announced that yet, but it's a decent chance it'll be someone that we can stack against. So we'll talk more about that in the 4 p.m. stream, but in general, I would assume we'll be in on the Diamondbacks here. I'm also okay with the Marlins against Luke Weaver. He's letting up a lot of hard contact this year. That's gotten into trouble the past few starts. And again, they were talking about potentially taking him out of the rotation, but sticking for now, the Marlins, not a great offense, so I'll likely prefer the Diamondbacks side here, depending on what the Marlins decide to do for a pitcher. But overall, I do want to be involved in the hitting side of this game because it's a good hitting environment. Neither pitcher seems super scary, depending on what the Marlins do, but overall, a good place to go for some bats for today. More on that on the 4 p.m. stream, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel side of things on each of those platforms and get your questions in later on. That is all that we have for today here on the Solo Shot, but as always, a big week ahead on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. PGA podcast coming up tomorrow with myself and Brandon Gadula, recording live on YouTube at 10 a.m. We also have NBA and NHL from Tom Vecchio, of course, as those regular seasons start to wind down. Tom still has you covered over there. We'll also have a NASCAR podcast later this week for Dover. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions for me before 4 p.m., I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for setting up the video broadcast for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. Hopefully that weather holds out for us at Coors Field. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow for Tuesday's slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.